All right, so what do we say about this vehicle? This vehicle is an 08 JK, and it had a 6-liter 5-speed in it. So it had an LS engine that was mated to a 5-speed Chrysler WA580 transmission. This vehicle had somewhat of an odd, at least to me, operating system. It was running a NAGS 1 transmission controller, then a CAN interface without an ECM, or a PCM should I say, on the Chrysler side. So essentially what we had was a late model, and if you look here you'll see that the shifter was switched over to the late model shifter so it could run the 5-speed transmission. So what they did is they retrofitted the vehicle to a late model 5-speed WA580, and then they mated that to a 6-liter LS and came up with a module to interface the two. It was a small CAN module. Well, the issue was, without the Jeep PCM, a lot of things weren't working. The odometer wasn't working. Now, we got everything working, cruise control, tap shift, all that. The airbag light's on because we have the seats disconnected right now, but everything works as intended now. We didn't have remote start. We didn't have a proper odometer. The air conditioning did work, but really the biggest problem was the transmission. It just shifted terrible. It shifted at the wrong time. It shifted the wrong pressure, so it either shifted too hard, like you get off the gas and it would shift really hard, or you run it hard and it would shift soft. So it was really erratic and unpredictable the way it shifted. Now, that is somewhat the trademark of the WA580. However, in this application, it just didn't work. Now, earlier on, this conversion was done using the Jeep PCM to control the LS engine, and I do believe the transmission worked much better. I have driven those. The problem therein was that you couldn't program the LS side. So guys that wanted to put cams in or have any kind of tuning using GM software were out of luck because there was no GM computer. But it did make the transmission happy. So by going to the GM computer and eliminating the Chrysler computer, it made the GM engine happy, but let's just say the rest of the vehicle, at least this vehicle, is not. So the main reason this vehicle was in was the transmission was shifting very spotty. There was a lot of non-functional things, like the odometer wasn't accurate, remote start didn't work, cruise control didn't work, and I could go on. The vehicle came in with a Pentastar fan, which worked okay, but the grille is somewhat blocked in this vehicle. If you look at the grille in the video, you're going to see it's just a screen mesh, and that was blocking a lot of air. When this vehicle came in, it was pushing triple digits here in Vegas, and I couldn't cruise it down the highway without it hitting 245, 250 degrees. The SS fan has helped a lot. We've installed our radiator and an SS fan. Now, we are using our new dual header radiator. I know a lot of shops won't use aluminum radiators because they feel that they leak, but the reality is the stock radiator just wasn't enough. I do believe our dual header radiator is about the best on the market right now. So we put a dual header radiator and an SS fan in, and obviously the cooling issues are over. The SS fan is being controlled properly by the GM computer, and here's the thing. When this came in, we didn't have a Chrysler PCM. So the TIPM was controlling the fan, and they had it run through some kind of little black box that was being controlled off of the original fan harness. So I'm guessing that it had a couple of speeds. It wasn't variable speed, but I am guessing on that. Now everything is run through the GM side. The engine, the transmission, the fan, cooling system, emissions, all pure GM. So we're not hokey pokey trying to figure out how to get it to pass emissions with a hybrid, or how are we going to tune the engine when we got a GM engine and a Chrysler transmission and we're running a GM computer with a NAGS 1. It just, in my book, it was not only weird, but I can't really wrap my head around the logic of mixing and matching things like that. I do believe the intent in the early days was, hey, let's make a LS engine run inside of a Chrysler operating system. That will get all the functionality that we want. And when they were running the Chrysler operating system, I guess that made sense. But you got to look at the legality of that and the downside to that. And there's an upside and a downside to everything. The downside to us going pure GM all along was the complexity of integrated into the JK. With our new CAN interface module, that's become pretty easy. And as a bonus, we have all the advantages of the GM operating system now. That includes the engine and the transmission. That includes full functionality, tuning, programming, diagnostics of the GM operating system. We do run a factory GM harness. This had a harness that was a hybrid, as I said, so it had the NAGS 1 controller tapped into it. It had the GM computer in it. It had a CAN interface in it. It didn't really have a power distribution center. It had a couple of fuses and relays. So it was really a custom built harness for this application. So what we have here is a different approach. Everybody's looking for the magic bullet. How can I get more power into my JK? So the bottom line is we all approach engine performance differently. Chrysler's coming out with their new 392 8-speed JL, and I think that's a good thing. I think having a factory offering is giving guys more options over the high price conversions out there, especially the Hemis that are pushing $35,000 to $40,000. We're going to stick with the LT 10-speed. I do believe the direct injected GM engines have significant advantages over the Chrysler system, and they're less costly. So that means you can purchase a used Wrangler for a reasonable price, maybe $20,000 or $30,000, put $20,000 to $30,000 into a new powertrain and be into it for a lot less money than a new JL 392, and you'll have superior technology. This Jeep was a hybrid with custom built harnesses and custom programmed interface modules. Now the powertrain is all GM. GM engine control module, transmission control module, factory tuning, operating systems, calibrations. All right, it's time to take a look at this thing. It's been here for a little while. We got to do some updates on it. This is a Jeep that wasn't built by Motec. It was built by a competitor. The customer wasn't happy with some of the drivability and some of the loss of functionality, and we're going to fix it up for him. And guys, I'm not here to hammer on anybody. I just want to take a look as a objective observer, just like you are. This is actually the first time I'm looking at this Jeep in depth, and I really don't know what I'm going to see. We will do a test drive on it too, because I always do that before I start a new project. Sorry about the noise in the back. We're building a couple of crate engine builds, builder packages, and there's a lot of noise. Okay, so what I do know is this is an iron L96 or 6-liter engine. Excellent engine. This is not a 6-liter throttle body. Let's walk on over and look at a 6-liter throttle body. This is the truck throttle body. They use this in the 5.3s and the 6.2s and the 6.0s in the LS lineup. What he has is an LS3. Let's go take a look at one of those. Now you can see we're running the factory harness here. Here's an LT1, guys. Look how small it looks, even in this earlier JK. Here's an LS3 we just dropped the body on, and this is a real LS3. This isn't an L99. And you can see that's the throttle body that they're running on that 6.0. So let's look over here. We have a wet lead acid battery, which I really like. I do believe this is the coolant bottle. Not sure how you would check the level on that. We are running a similar K&N filter to what we run. These heater hoses here with electrical wires tie wrapped to them. I'm not a big fan of that. This is your main power going down to the starter, so I would keep that isolated from the heater hoses. Also, check this out. This is our mass airflow sensor, and it's literally a ½ inch away from the exhaust. So we'll correct that. This is an LS3 or passenger style MAF. We run the same one. Now, this is running the GM alternator and power steering pump. Now usually when you do that, it gets real tight down there, and I think you can see that it is, and you get some funky hoses. That's probably why the PSC reservoir is over here, because the power steering pump's over here. On the JK it's over here, and as you guys know, on this engine we use all stock hoses and lines, and we put the PSC reservoir here. Everybody does stuff differently, and this is how this conversion was done. This is a Chrysler transmission, that's a GM engine, and this is what marries it together. So we have basically a Chrysler torque converter with this adapter ring mating it to a GM flex plate, and then we have this other adapter ring mating the GM block to the Chrysler transmission. So here's the benefit of this setup. You can basically run this engine, or at least in the early days, these guys ran the LS engine just like a inside of a Chrysler operating system, just like a Hemi. So then you had all that functionality. It was easy. We chose to run a GM transmission, which obviously complicated things a lot on the electronic side, but the hardware is simple. It's all stock GM. In fact, we got basically the same engine over here. Is this an L96 or a L9H? Yeah, this is L96, brand new. And you can see our accessory drive setup. Notice that we run everything right back where it was. We got room here for our passenger upper mount. It's not going to come up and smack the air compressor. The air compressor is right back where it was. This is our billet bracket drive. We're running the power steering pump right where it was with stock hoses. If you come back here, we've got a GM transmission, no adapters, no rings. We've got the Trailblazer manifolds, which I think are a little bit better than the LS3. We got hydraulic motor mounts, and yep, we're running heat shields on them now. Now he's running the GM drive on this, and you'll notice that the compressor's down here. There is a possibility, he's obviously got long arms on this, but if you have the stock pickup points in that control arm, it can come up and smack that air compressor. And then of course you've got the power steering pump bunched up over here. You got to run a reduced size pulley. You're not running smart charging. So there's some compromises there. And then back here, I'm not really sure what we got going on. We got a custom cross member. We're running a stock Chrysler training mount, but there's been a lot of fabrication here rather than everything being original. Oh, you notice we got variable valve timing here, and we got our cam sensor here. Now that one has these sensors on it, but the VVT does not appear to be working. I don't know if the cam was changed out or what. We do run VVT in our engines. Guys, the billet brackets are bolt-on. This tensioner is off of a JK. Obviously, all the accessories are off a JK. The tensioner, as you can see here, is just about touching the water pump, but it's not. When the belt tension is right, that tensioner is vertical, straight up and down. We've been doing this setup for about 10 years. One advantage is you can run the stock power steering hoses, as we mentioned, and we're going to be able to run the stock air conditioning lines also. You can see that the power steering lines get a little complicated here, especially with hydraulics. You've got the pump right there up against the gear, so you got to run up and loop it around to give it some flex. And we did it that way, guys, for some time. We supported the GM front accessory drive. Guys wanted to run it, but again, we ran into the problems with the compressor getting smacked and the power steering pump being smashed up here, and no smart charging, etc. So we also had to fabricate AC lines, and if this engine wasn't offset, if it was put in the stock position, that compressor would be right up against the frame, and it would be difficult to get the lines on. So it just made a lot more sense to put the stuff back where it belonged. Here's something a lot of you guys ask. Notice this weird female output shaft on the WA580. Jeep's been doing that since 2012. Why they reversed it, I don't know, but that makes it much more difficult to get an adapter for a transfer case. We run the 241J, which we prefer, as you guys know, and we put the large 32 spline input from a GM 241C, which was designed to run with a 4L80, and it's good for a good 500 horsepower. The starter motor mounts to the block, and it sticks through this ring, and then it looks like they've sectioned the bell housing to accommodate the nose of the starter. We're taking this Jeep to the mountain. We'll be back with some more interesting things. Thanks.